The Water-Dead Ghost. The story happened around 1994 to 1995, I don't remember clearly. My hometown in the central region is full of wind and rain, so my stories are as magical as those lands. That day was around September, it was raining heavily. My grandfather just brought his net to go fishing. My grandfather went to his usual place to fish and did it as usual. But that day was strange, it was raining heavily but he couldn't catch any fish. Normally, if it rains that much, there are a lot of fish. He was sad and was about to leave, when he suddenly saw a person on a nearby bridge slowly walking towards him. He asked, "Where are you going when it's raining heavily like this?" "Man, I'm going to herd the ducks but it's raining so hard. If you have some free time, help me roll up my trouser leg, it's getting in the way." My grandfather was enthusiastic so he agreed to roll up his pants to help him. But when my grandfather just pulled up the man's trouser leg, he saw that his leg was very slimy, and when he rolled it up further, he saw that the flesh on that man's leg was falling off. According to my grandfather's experience, he has encountered the devil. It is a drowned ghost, it appears to poke people and drag them down the river. At that time, if my grandfather had run away, he would have easily been pushed down the bridge. He did something based on his own experience. That is, take some salt in his pocket, and rub it on the man's shin, then the man disappears. My grandfather also returned home at that time, and never went to that river to fish again. Because according to the concept in my hometown, if it follows you, it will catch you sooner or later. The best way to prevent it is to not go to places where you will be met again. Night going. A drunk middle-aged man staggered on his way home. His body swayed as he walked through the empty street, his mouth humming in singing babble. By chance, seeing a little girl sitting with a tree branch scribbling on the ground, he walked closer and asked, "Hey little girl, it's so late at night and you're still a little girl, why are you sitting here?" The little girl looked up at him, her mouth showing an incomprehensible smile while her eyes were filled with tears. Scarily, her eyes were very deep and only the black eye sockets were visible. "I'm using a stick to dig the ground to bury someone. My father abandoned my mother and children, causing my mother to have a miscarriage. But now he's dead." The drunkard immediately thought that her family was probably too poor and didn't have money for a proper burial, so he didn't care much. While turning around to leave, he suddenly tripped on a tree branch on the ground and fell. Unfortunately, he hit his head on a rock and died on the spot. His body was covered with mud and dirt like a grave. In the quiet night without a single person passing by, the little girl's creepy voice and mysterious laughter rang out. "It's finally done." Bus to school. As usual, I sat on the bus, which takes students to school. Because I was focused on listening to music, I rarely paid attention to other students also sitting in the car. At one of the bus stops, I somehow noticed my surroundings. I looked towards the small house, where the bus was stopping. "That's Tommy's house, I know that house." Suddenly, a hand quickly passed through the bus window, and waved to the bus driver to continue moving without having to pick that person up. Maybe he's sick, I thought briefly. At the end of the day, I returned to the rented house. After finishing dinner, I went to my bedroom to surf social networks. Accidentally, I watched the local news channel while scrolling through reels on Facebook. What I heard shocked me. Tommy's entire family was killed by an unknown suspect that day. After hearing this news, I immediately checked to see if the doors were locked, then quietly covered my body with a blanket and fell asleep. The next day, I sat on the bus to school again. Our bus still passed by Tommy's house, perhaps because the bus driver did not know the news about Tommy's family that was shown yesterday. When I was about to stand up to explain to the driver what happened yesterday, there was an image that I will never forget. There was a pale hand passing through the bus window, and waving to the driver to keep going like yesterday. I sat crouched on the bus and trembled with fear. buried alive. Someone told me that once upon a time, there was an extremely beautiful maid who worked for a rich family. Her beauty made the homeowner unable to take his eyes off her. While jealous, the wife sent the girl to do a job for her far away in the hope that she would never return. But when she finished, the girl still returned. Her return made the wife so angry that she ordered someone to pull out all the girl's fingernails and cut off all her hair and eyelashes. Then, she also cut off the maid's mouth, causing the lovely mouth that usually smiles gracefully to now be stretched all the way to the ears. All of the maid's teeth were pulled out, and a heated metal rod was also pressed against her. They buried the girl in one of the walls of the house, leaving only a small vent. One night, while lying in bed with her husband, the wife felt extremely uncomfortable and insecure. She had trouble sleeping but felt like someone was watching her, so she didn't dare move. Too scared, she trembled as she pulled the wool blanket over her head and closed her eyes, then reached out and grabbed her husband's hand to reassure herself. But the wife suddenly realized that the hands she held were very soft, sticky with some fishy liquid, and even scarier, it had absolutely no nails. Cemetery. One rainy night, a taxi driver passed by a dark, deserted street. It goes through a large cemetery ahead. That place is cold, scary, and thousands of square meters wide. The driver suddenly saw something walking on the side of the road. He looked closely and realized it was a girl with blue eyes and blonde hair, wearing a white dress. She wandered barefoot on the street. He was quite scared but tried to reassure himself that this was just a resident walking at night, even though there were hardly any houses nearby. The girl stood from afar waving at him. This was the sign of a person asking for a ride. The driver pulled the car to the side of the road and invited the girl to sit in the back seat. The driver greeted the girl to try to dispel the fear in his mind when driving alone on a rainy and windy night with no one around like this. "Why are you gone so late?" "Yes, thank you, and please take me a little, my house is right in front." The girl skillfully avoided the driver's question. The girl's voice was quite soft and her voice was a bit cold, perhaps influenced by standing in the night dew for too long. The driver happily accepted. He was very happy to have someone to share the car with to ease his fear and anxiety, even though this girl seemed very quiet. Passing by the quiet cemetery, the driver tried to control himself from shivering because of the bone-chilling cold that the cemetery radiated. The graves are close together, surrounded by luxuriant grass, and white smoke mixed with the cold air. Finally, the car safely passed through the large cemetery. At this time, the driver turned to the back seat to talk to the girl, but discovered that the girl had disappeared.